To hell with war. I am not such a fool as to believe that war is a thing of the past. I know that people do not want war, but there is no use in saying we cannot be pushed into another war. Looking back, Woodrow Wilson was re-elected president in 1916 on a platform that he had kept us out of war and on the implied promise that he would keep us out of war. Yet, 5 months later, he asked Congress to declare war on Germany. In that 5-month interval, the people had not been asked whether they had changed their minds. The 4 million young men who put on uniforms and marched or sailed away were not asked whether they wanted to go forth to suffer and to die. Then what caused our government to change its mind so suddenly? Money. An Allied commission, it may be recalled, came over shortly before the war declaration and called on the president. The president summoned a group of advisors. The head of the commission spoke. Stripped of its diplomatic language, this is what he told the president and his group. There is no use kidding ourselves any longer. The cause of the Allies is lost. We now owe you, American bankers, American munitions makers, American manufacturers, American speculators, American exporters, $5 or $6 billion. If we lose, and without the help of the United States we must lose, we, England, France, and Italy, cannot pay back this money, and Germany won't. So, had secrecy been outlawed as far as war negotiations were concerned, and had the press been invited to be present at that conference, or had the radio been available to broadcast the proceedings, America never would have entered the World War. But this conference, like all war discussions, was shrouded in the utmost secrecy. When our boys were sent off to war, they were told it was a war to make the world safe for democracy, and a war to end all wars. Well, 18 years later, the world has less of a democracy than it had then. Besides, what business is it of ours whether Russia or Germany or England or France or Italy or Austria live under democracies or monarchies, whether they are fascists or communists? Our problem is to preserve our own democracy. And very little, if anything, has been accomplished to assure us that the World War was really the war to end all wars. Yes, we have had disarmament conferences and limitations of arms conferences. They don't mean a thing. One has just failed. The results of another have been nullified. We send our professional soldiers and our sailors and our politicians and our diplomats to these conferences. And what happens? The professional soldiers and sailors don't want to disarm. No admiral wants to be without a ship. No general wants to be without a command. Both mean men without jobs. They are not for disarmament. They cannot be for limitations of arms. And at all these conferences, lurking in the background but all-powerful, just the same, are the sinister agents of those who profit by war. They see to it that these conferences do not disarm or seriously limit armaments. The chief aim of any power at any of these conferences has been not to achieve disarmament in order to prevent war, but rather to endeavor to get more armament for itself and less for any potential foe. There is only one way to disarm with any semblance of practicality. That is, for all nations to get together and scrap every ship, every gun, every rifle, every tank, every warplane. Even this, if it were at all possible, would not be enough. The next war, according to experts, will be fought not with battleships, not by artillery, not with rifles, and not with guns. It will be fought with deadly chemicals and gases. Secretly, each nation is studying and perfecting newer and ghastlier means of annihilating its foes wholesale. Yes, ships will continue to get built, for the shipbuilders must make their profits, and guns still will be manufactured, and powder and rifles will be made, for the munitions makers must make their huge profits, and the soldiers, of course, must wear uniforms, for the manufacturers must make their war profits too. But victory or defeat will be determined by the skill and ingenuity of our scientists. If we put them to work making poison gas and more fiendish mechanical and explosive instruments of destruction, they will have no time for the constructive job of building a greater prosperity for all peoples. By putting them to this useful job, we can all make more money out of peace than we can out of war, even the munitions makers. So I say, to hell with war. Common sense neutrality. Let's look over this European brawl and see where we stand on it, or why we should stand anywhere on it for that matter. First, let's see if we have contributed one single thing to cause it. Also, let's see if even a part of the responsibility for it can be pinned on us. Finally, let's see if we have anything at all to do with it. If we think it over calmly, we all know perfectly well that we did not have one solitary blessed thing to do with the making of the mess over there, and that there is no possible sane and logical reason why we should feel any impulse to take a hand in it. Did we have anything to do with the promises Britain and France made to Poland? No, we didn't. Did we have anything to do with Hitler's land grabbing? No, we didn't. Did we have anything to do with Britain and France declaring war on Germany? We certainly did not, and were not even consulted. These are some of the smelly things in this pit of European back-alley politics into which we will be sucked if we don't watch our step, if we are fools enough to allow ourselves to get all excited about this brawl that is going on over there, as such brawls have, almost since the dawn of history. Before they started this row over land and natural resources, did they ask our advice or tell us their plans? Ask for our good wishes or even our opinion? No, they did not. And we neither advised nor encouraged them, so why should we get all stewed up about it and furnish the ammunition to keep it going? Just because people on the other side of the world insist on continuing their age-old practice of committing mass suicide, do we as a nation have to follow their example and blow out our brains too? Are we to adopt a policy of sitting around this European cockpit and going to the rescue of our favorite cocks whenever they get themselves into a fight they might not be able to win without us? Are we to become so entangled in European high-pressure politics that the main issue at our elections will be whether or not to allow political changes abroad? If we are to make it our practice to take part in these cockfights over there, we should certainly vote on it. Have it in all our national political platforms every time we have an election. 25 years ago, we sold the munitions and then had to go abroad to bail out Britain and France, helped drench the gore, sodden fields of Europe with the blood of 250,000 of our finest boys, the pride of our manhood, helped sow the seeds of the present orgy, spent $50 billion on that venture. Are we to keep on doing it? Are we to blame because Hitler built himself a great hair-trigger war machine that crushes everything in front of it? Are we responsible that England and France did not build a machine to stop him? Are we culpable in any way because Hitler started before the other side was ready? Provided Britain and France really want to stop Hitler, are we to make up for their failure to prepare to do so by sticking out our necks? Suppose you were walking down a strange street in a strange town in a strange country thousands of miles from your own home. You come across a brawl. You have no real interest in it. All of a sudden, you hear one of the brawlers cry out, in your native tongue, as he swats his opponent, "I believe in democracy." You don't know in the least what the fight is about, but your sympathies are at once with this fellow who speaks your own language. The believer in democracy sees you hesitate and shouts, "Come on and get in. We believe in the same things. Also, don't forget, if this other fellow wins, you'll be next. You'd better come in now." You reply, "No, I don't want to. I'm a stranger and don't want to get mixed up in this. I like you, but not enough to get into a fight. I want to be neutral." "All right," he says, "be neutral. But you can gather up all the stones, clubs, and brickbats you can get a hold of and sell them to me. I'll use them on the other fellow." That's a swell way to be neutral, isn't it? Do you really think that if you start handing your Democratic friend ammunition, you won't get into it too? You can't help it. If he's losing, and if he wins, he will only call you a scab, say he could have won by himself anyhow, and declare that he owes you nothing. He will also hate you because you made money out of his necessity. So both sides will hate you. On the other hand, if you stay out of this fight, with which you have nothing to do with in the first place, the argument that if the other fellow wins, he will give you a good beating too won't apply. you will have gone on with your own business instead of butting into a fight where you did not belong. And better still, the winner won't find you right there on hand and ready to be chewed up next. You will be thousands of miles away, and he will have to come after you. They say, well, if the French and the British don't like Hitler, he will come over here and jump on our necks. He'll be bombing our women and children and shelling our cities. Don't let anyone feed you that rot. It doesn't take military education to figure out what I'm going to tell you. It will take not less than 1 million soldiers to invade the United States with any hope of success. These million men must come all at once. They must bring not less than 7 tons of baggage per man. 1 million men, 7 million tons of food, ammunition, whatnot. For instance, just one item. They must bring 400,000 vehicles alone, tractors, 50 gallons of gasoline per day for each vehicle for 270 days. That's 9 months' supply. Why, there are not enough ships in the whole world, including our own, and we certainly wouldn't lend them ours, to carry that kind of expedition. And remember, these ships have to bring with them enough fuel to get back with, to make the round trips. We certainly aren't going to give them fuel over here to go home with. Any dumb cluck can see that. But here's some more. They've got to have harbors to lie in, docks on which to unload their shores. You know that you can't stop 25 miles out at sea, drop a 50-ton armored tank overboard, and tell it to swim ashore and meet you on Broadway. Remember that with all the harbors, docks, and ships of England and France at our disposal in the World War, it took us 19 months to get 1,900,000 men to France. And that, though this expedition was headed for a friendly country and that all possible help on the other side was ours, it took months of preparation after the United States had actually declared war before it was safe to send the troops over. You know very well that we are not going to open our harbors to them, prepare docks for them, and invite them in. New York is the only big one we have on this coast, and to block New York Harbor, all you have to do is dump 2 days' garbage in the channel, instead of hauling it out to sea. Don't you see? It's all a question of supply, this invading business. Men and munitions always run out before the supply of men is exhausted. Just figure it out for yourselves. For every man at the front, you must ship every day of the year from your Home Depot 1,000 pounds of supplies, food, ammunition, gasoline, clothing, medical supplies, engineering supplies, spare parts, etc., to say nothing of replacements of the above. If you have 200,000 men at the front, you will have 800,000 supplying them from the rear, and you will have to send them 100,000 tons of supplies every day. Remember also that for every 1,000 miles you go across water on an invading expedition into a hostile land, you must take with you 90 days' stores of all kinds. It is over 3,000 miles across the Atlantic. 3 times 90 is 270 days. 9 months. No, the supply of a European army in America is out of the question. That is, an army big enough to land here. There's another thing to remember. No fleet can operate more than 1,500 miles from its base, and Germany proper would be the base of a Hitler invading fleet. No, he couldn't get his fleet over here or get it home again. If he did. But, they say, he might build a base somewhere in South America. Well, my friends, those who got up that little idea overlooked the fact that it is farther by a good deal from Berlin to South America than from Berlin to New York. So why invade America via South America? It doesn't make sense. For when Hitler got to South America, he would be a good deal further away from us than if he had come straight over from Berlin. So don't let that frighten you. It is all pure propaganda and insane to talk of Hitler invading us. And don't forget, too, that we have a navy of our own, and it's the best in the world. Now, what about an aerial invasion? Well, Colonel Lindbergh and Eddie Rickenbacker, the 2 foremost flyers we have, already have told us it's ridiculous to talk of an invasion by air or to talk or think of bombing New York from Berlin. But suppose they do invent a plane that might be able to do it. That airplane has got to make the round trip too, and without landing, with the fuel with which it started. And even if they build a plane that will do that, we have enough brains in this country to make some sort of machine that will destroy it before it hurts our women and children. And don't forget that we have an air force of our own, and a fine one too. So let's take one thing at a time. This war's in Europe. It isn't over here. And it won't come over here unless we invite it. And the best way to invite it was to raise this embargo and sell bombs and ammunitions. They'll have the stamp of American makers on them, and they have the RSVR that will bring about the invitation. An invitation to go over there and join the mess. Oh, but the bogey is that someone will come over here. Don't be alarmed. No one in Europe can afford to leave home. Why, if Hitler were to leave Germany with 1 million men to go anywhere, if he ever got back, he'd find everybody speaking French or Russian. Those babies would move in on him while he was gone. No, there isn't a single crazy war dog that can come over here. We can build a defense of our own country that not even a rat, much less a mad dog, could creep through.